Hey friends, welcome back to the Finding Joy in Your Home podcast. I am your host, Jamie Balmay, and today I have one of my favorite guests of all time. A lot of you probably know her, Jamarelle Stewart from Large Family Table. She's over on Instagram or on Instagram, but also on YouTube. Jamarelle is amazing. Every time I sit down to talk to her, her and I could chat forever. So I have been sitting on this episode. I have been waiting for a good time to release it, which works out beautifully. Our family has been really sick the last couple of weeks. We had scarlet fever. I didn't even know that was a thing anymore. It was really not a big deal. It wasn't like scary, but we were so sick. As soon as everybody was feeling better, I came down with it. And I was thinking, I'm going to get away. I am not going to get this sickness. And I got hit. And thankfully it wasn't too bad, but I am also pregnant. And so I kept saying, I don't think it should be allowed that you're newly pregnant and also sick on top of each other. It just should not be allowed. I was throwing a little bit of a pity party. But it was really good that everybody, including Jason, was better by the time I got sick. And when they were sick, I was able to take care of everybody. So Jason and the kids took care of me then while I was sick. So it was about 3 weeks that we were it was long and drawn out. You know how it is with a big family. It just takes a long time to work its way through. So thankfully we are feeling better, but man, are we behind on everything in life. So all that to be said, I'm really, really excited that I have this episode today to pull out of my back pocket because this interview is fantastic. What we're going to talk about today in this interview with Jamarelle is really great because this is all stuff that we can be working on and implementing right now. I think it's so important to be looking at your food sources, where you're getting food from, and do you have more than 72 hours worth of food in your house? And we were joking about this a couple of months ago, or last month. It feels like it was a couple of months ago. Just last month, we were joking about this because we live in Oklahoma now. Oklahoma has severe weather. When we lived in California, we didn't know what severe weather was. We thought we did, but you really don't. We lived in a very temperate climate. And so having severe weather here, there's tornadoes, and we had an ice storm come in recently. And the ice storm was a big deal. Thankfully, we did not end up losing power or anything. But we were laughing that we just ran to the store to go get something like cheese for something. We just needed some little thing. And the store was like 2 days before the ice storm was so insane that it was like, and the ice was supposed to be here for 24 hours and then it would be melted by the next day. So like I don't know, in my opinion, it didn't feel like that big of an emergency. It wasn't a blizzard coming in for 3 weeks. And just the shelves were empty. And it's amazing to realize that a lot of people don't have more than like 48 hours worth of food in there, or even, maybe a week's worth of food in their house. Now, we would definitely run out of certain things. We're not going to have eggs for very long. But we do have a lot of food in our house that we could cook if need be. We could survive in our house for a month without having to grocery shop. Like, yes, we'd run out of fruits and veggies and some fresh things, obviously, but we would have food there. And I think that's a really important discussion to have right now. And what does that look like? What can we have in our home? What can we, and I'm not talking like doomsday prepping, but are we looking at caring for our family well in the future with having food in our house? And Jamarelle is like 10 steps ahead of me in this process. And so I love getting to chat with her. So what she's going to do is she's going to walk with us through the process of building up her bulk pantry, her freezer, and learning how to cook for your family out of that. Like, this is not like a doomsday prepping episode. This is like practical. How do you do this every single day in your home, and what benefits are you going to get? So we're going to dive into all of that. And like I said, Jamarelle, you can find her over at largefamilytable.com. She's on YouTube and Instagram as Jamarelle Stewart. I think on YouTube, she's Large Family Table. If you don't know Jamarelle, you need to go find her. I love watching her videos. She is awesome. I really love her. So you can go check all of that out. She's a mom of 9, a homeschooling mom of 9. So she knows what it is to be busy, on the go, and yet still making good food. So we're going to jump right into that. And then we also are going to hear from our 2 sponsors for today's episode. We have Air Doctor and HelloFresh. So we'll hear from them in a little while. But for now, let's just go ahead and jump right into the episode. Okay, so we're going to be talking about growing a homestead. I mean, we have a lot of topics today we're going to dive into.
We could talk about a lot, yeah.
Yes. So I've got a few specific questions that I am dying to ask. So first, though, why don't you give us an introduction about you, your family, your growing homestead, kind of what your goals and visions are?
All the things. So my name is Jamarelle Stewart, and I've been on the internet for 12 years. So that's dinosaur land, right?
Yes.
And I was thinking the other day when I started online, I had 5 kids, started online as a business.
Yeah.
I'm a mom of 9. So, and I'm also a Grammy now. We have our first grandchild.
Oh, yay.
Let's see. We live in the Shenandoah Valley, and we are on 7 acres. And kind of in the years before my business started also, I was on a very small grocery budget. And I was doing very beginning homesteading things, but a lot of that had to be paused when I started accidentally making money come out of the internet, and I needed to provide for my family. So I'm back in a season. I've had chickens the whole time. I probably had chickens for 15 years, but just there's certain things that got paused that a few years ago I was able to flip the switch on and start moving forward in again.
I love that.
So Mama's had to do a few things. So,
well, and that's a good reminder that there are different seasons we're going to walk through. And I know for me, it's kind of similar, but I really started in making homemade things and learning how to can. And I was so into this 10 years ago. And then I had 2 sets of twins back to back.
That wins. Yes.
And I just was find something frozen in the freezer and make it you go through certain seasons, whether it's for business or health reasons or all kinds of things, that those priorities sometimes have to take precedence, but then we can slip back into the season. And so I love that reminder that, okay, now it's time to pick it back up, and now we're going to do it.
2020, was pretty radical for most people. And it really, it was like, oh yeah, remember all that stuff you were doing 10 years ago? Because 10 years before, or maybe it was 8, I have to write my timeline out to keep it straight. But when I lived in my farmhouse on 2 acres, I know I had chickens. I had a big garden every year with, a bunch of babies dripping off of me. And Lord just blessed it. We planted stuff and we harvested it and we ate it. And I was doing beginning canning, and I butchered my first 3 mean roosters because I wanted to know that I could do it. Barefoot and pregnant, and I had my chickens, but I had these roosters. I could not give them away. So I Googled my way through how to butcher a chicken the easy way because I wanted to know that I could do it if I had to. And I also started buying, and even the lodge cast iron was expensive for me. So I started buying one little lodge piece at a time.
Yep.
So because we had a wood stove that I knew in case of an emergency I could cook on. And we also had well water, but we had a pond. So we would have times where we might be out of power for a week or so, and we hauled buckets from the pond and flushed the toilets with that. And, we had a little mini homestead setup going on there.
Well, and I love, like you said, 2020, I think, was a wake up call for so many of us, just realizing with the food chain, with supply issues, and we don't even think about our food being shipped from overseas, and we don't think through all of those different things. And so 2020, I think, was such a big wake up call that we could realize there's things that we need to do. There's things that maybe some baby steps that we could start taking to become a little bit more self-sufficient, or just have, I know you talk about having a grocery store in your basement, which we're going to talk about. But 2020 was such a wake up call just for a lot of us that we're maybe not as comfortable as we think we are, or maybe we shouldn't be as comfortable as we think we are. And that there's some things we can add.
Yeah. It was wild to me because, a family of 11, we've been a gallon a day milk family for so long. And just being able, going to the grocery store and only being able to buy 1 gallon at a time, if they even had it. Yes. And the only meat available was chicken feet. And, of course, the toilet paper thing. But it just, for me, it was I just say I felt like an idiot. But I was because I have local homesteading friends, and we're on the county line border. Polyface Farm is, just down there a little bit. And so I know, and I have local folks that I've been around who know. And I was I need these things in practice. And it honestly wasn't in fear. It was just more the Holy Spirit was ding, ding, ding. Remember this?
Wisdom.
Yes.
Yep.
And
Totally.
so in 2020, and of course we were all home, and it was obviously the Lord's hand though. We had just sold a house and moved into this property. And it was like 2 weeks before the whole world changed.
Wow.
And at this house, I have a 2,200 square foot basement. Again, Jesus loves me. I'm 43. I've waited my whole life for this. And there was this, extra cinder block room in going here. And of course, I had my laying hens, but that was our first year doing meat birds. And so now I believe this is my 4th season doing meat birds, because we moved here. It was winter, and then we had that summer. And, now I'm doing 2 or 3 loads of meat birds this year.
Wow.
So, at the time, folks were saying, oh, it's only because, I live 10% of my life on YouTube. So I had a lot of feedback about taking on too much of this, that, and the other. But really, I mean, we were on vacation like the rest of the world. We had 4, 5, 6 months to just do projects.
Yeah.
Everything was canceled. And that helped make it possible. And then here we are several years later, like we've got the equipment. We've provided our own chicken many times. And it seems like we're in a system now where every year we add 1 or 2 new things.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. It sounds like you jumped in with both feet, and then every year you just add 1 or 2 new little things.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask, I've been seeing on Instagram and probably YouTube, you've been sharing about your lasagna garden that you've been putting in. So I want to know what that is. And I want you to walk us through what's this. Sounds like this is your new thing you're adding this year.
The whole garden this year is because that was one thing in 2020. I was like, oh, we need to grow food because I don't know what's happening. So having not lived on the property, it's nice if you can live on a property and, analyze your sun and get to know it a bit. But we moved here in February, and by like end of March, we were having the garden area tilled. And it's just not where I did my 2020 garden. It's just not right with the shades. Now I am in the woods, but I have learned, I noticed that next year and then last year, a particular area where I actually get the most sun that's here. And I know the trees are good though, because they provide us from protection. Like I realize now we have cornfields all around us. And I did not know until recent years about all the things that are sprayed on corn. Yeah. So even the trees are like a barrier of protection.
Yes.
I can go down so many rabbit holes, Jamie. So just keep me focused, but talking about the garden. So I'm glad for the trees, but we have an area where all of them I bought on Amazon. All of them were $49 to $89 each. I've seen them marked down to $49, and they're 8x4 raised beds. And so, as a family, we got those built. We got dirt in them last year, and we got things in and we grew things. Now I didn't grow enough I didn't have enough success to have this bountiful harvest to preserve. But it was my goal for last year was to get the raised beds built by fall so I could garden this year. But instead we got them in, and I was able to quickly get a garden in.
Nice.
So this year of potatoes was her harvest, and she planted 250 pounds. Wow. And they're a family of 5. So my math is just, okay, family of 11 here. I think I've only been planting about 100 or so pounds of potatoes. And so just even this year, I was like, okay, I need room to plant more things.
Yeah.
So also for extra bonus points in this only real good area, I think, to garden on this property, we do have underground electric running. So that's fun. And so I couldn't till up a bigger space. But I had been reading about various no-dig garden methods, and I have read a lot about Ruth Stout and her methods. And I have tried those over the last few years, where basically she pretty much planted anything in hay, like old hay or straw. And so my mind was thinking Ruth Stout thoughts, because I do have several old like cattle bales of hay, which there's a whole trail I could get into just talking about hay. And so apparently worms will come and it'll feed the earthworms. If you have cardboard or newspaper, as they break down, newspaper breaks down more quickly. So it was a layer of newspaper and then a layer of straw or hay. And there's advantages and disadvantages there. And then compost on top. And I do have a good compost source this year. So that's what I did, Jamie. We just did. I don't even know how big it is, but I have since seen more about doing the rows. Remember, I'm not an expert, but I went to one of my friend's farms and she had these nice hilled mounds. But I have planted so much that in between every row, it's just going to be a wild jungle. We'll see how this all goes. But even between my potato rows, I did bean rows. And in between my determinate tomatoes, I've just done bush beans all over.
I love that.
Does this answer anything? So we've done arches everywhere. Like I got all my hopes and dreams arches this year. And then we did cattle panels that are up. And I've watched a lot. I watch YouTube too. So Jeff on Roots and Refuge, I watched a lot. Tutorial on doing the arch. And I've gone to enough Google and YouTube University to know that the cattle panels. And last year, I could not figure out why I had these tomatoes. I hope this helps everybody feel better about themselves, wherever you are. Okay. I could not figure out why I had tomatoes that grew nicely in the cages. And then I had a couple tomatoes that were wild, like just, I don't know, 12 feet, 20 feet, these arms that just stretched everywhere. And I could not keep them in the cages. And I was like, what is happening to these tomatoes? So I've since learned about determinate tomatoes, which only grow their set amount of fruit, and indeterminate that will just keep on growing until frost. And so I believe I have well over 150 various tomato plants this year.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
As a large family though, like I canned 380 pounds of tomato. Well, that's the tomatoes I started with, but I processed 380 pounds. And I know my tomato sauce was very thick, almost like a paste. I don't remember the numbers now. The YouTube video will tell us, but I think I only got, this is not the correct math, but I did not get anywhere close to like a year's worth of tomato products for my family. So I need a lot. And my backup plan is we do have a local produce auction, one of the largest in our states. So for anything, and so that's another method. My friend who lives in the Richmond area, she's not in a season where she's doing big gardens, but she just goes to like a Mennonite produce auction that's in her area. And she gets all her tomatoes for canning. And I forget what she told me her recent deals were, but it was just bushels and bushels of tomatoes for less than $100. Awesome. So that's a good backup. Like I'm either going to produce it or I'm going to get it locally.
Yeah. Well, that's for us. We're renting right now this year while we're trying to get resettled after moving. And so we have 4 little raised beds in our backyard, which for a family of 9 is not nearly enough. And we did like 15 tomato plants last year, but like I wanted to be able to can enough for the whole year. And so, and same with jam. So last year we just went to farms and we bought a bunch of bulk produce and it still helps. Like there's still so much you can do. Even, this is not my dream ideal garden setup, but there is so much you can do still when you get creative. So I've never heard of a produce auction though. So that's something I need to look into to see if we have that
Google
here.
That. Oklahoma produce auctions. Yeah. I had not, I think within the last 2 years, I've heard of that.
That's neat.
And I got, I don't know, how big is that? Half a bushel of squash for $9.99. So get good deals there.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just continue to talk, Jamie. So ask me another question.
Yes. No, I will. I'm going to stop your video though. For a few minutes, and I'm going to see if that's going to help our bandwidth a little bit because you're cutting out a tiny bit, but it's been great other than that. Yes. Okay. All right. So the next thing I really wanted to talk about, which is perfect because this segues right into it, is you talking about building a grocery store in your basement. Yes. So give us a look, like what does that look like? And give us maybe a tour as if you're walking downstairs to your basement, give us a tour of what that looks like.
So I have over the last couple of years, I've got to go back to 2020 again. So in 2020, in my crash course, I was like, man, I've always, for several years, I've had 4 to 6 weeks worth of food for our large family. And And then sometimes with my freezer meals, I might have freezer meals that could even spread up to 12 weeks, but I've still needed to, do my once a month grocery shopping.
Yeah.
And in 2020, I started really thinking about expanding my short-term food storage and also building long-term food storage. So food that I could have in buckets that would be good, 5, 10, 15, 20 some years.
Yeah.
I had heard that concept, but I wanted to learn about it. So I got a book called A Year Without the Grocery Store.
Oh yeah. It's a great one.
Yeah, by my friend Karen Morris. And she's been over in my membership community a bunch and everything. She's a very insightful lady. And I just read her method where she taught about using Mylar. And I think in her book, she talks about, because before everyone caught on to using a flat iron to seal their Mylar, people would take like a board and a clothes iron. So that's how I did it the first couple of times. And so I did quite a bit of even long-term food storage, which I feel like goes a little beyond even building the grocery store in the basement. But I felt like having food buckets was important. And once I learned that skill, and it doesn't mean that, the 20-pound bag of organic cane sugar from Azure in a bucket with Mylar, I still feel like in the first couple of years, it's good to still rotate through those things.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know that I could do that. And I wanted to know that it worked, basically, that I have things now that I'll use the gamma lids for. But that's where I started with the food storage, expanding to more than just a few months. As I would find, I have a local discount grocery store in my area called Sharp Shopper. That's just wonderful. So even though it was 2020, they would still have I don't know, I think it was 20-pound bags of noodles for $5.99.
Wow.
They would still get things in. And so, sure, I would spend $40 on noodles and I would put them in the buckets because again, none of us knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And I know we can roll through it.
Yep.
So then that expanded to where my husband put shelving up for me. He got shelves between Tractor Supply and Lowe's. So they're nice, heavy metal shelving, like industrial shelving, and he secured them to the walls. And I just started to do things like, go to Aldi and get extra boxes of cans. Or when I went to Walmart, I would because it can seem like it's a lot of money, but a little at a time. Even if someone does like $10 a week, okay, we've got over $500 for a year.
Yeah.
You just spent $10 a week on canned goods. Now, I was not back. I did start to get back into home canning then, but that's not where my mind was at first.
Yeah.
Did get back into like canning meat, but I didn't have the full vision yet of trying to, grow, obtain, produce. And, the overall vision is I want to be as self-sufficient as possible. And I want to be producing our own food and our own meat and canning and freeze drying and doing all that. But again, we all start somewhere.
Yeah.
So I really started with just buying extra canned goods. And those generally have a shelf life even longer than the date that's on them.
Yeah.
So I have, a shelf with tons of tomatoes. I've been slow rotating through, working through, peanut butter and jelly, and a lot of canned salmon and tuna in my cooking at different times for different food projects. So I have shelves full of those items and lots of spices. And I have a whole, toiletry side, where we have our diapers and our toilet paper and 20 bottles of poo and those sort of things. But the thing is, not large family mom, like average YouTube viewer who might look at all those products and just think, oh my goodness, they're just hoarding. They'll never use that. Well, no, whenever you are really feeding a lot, Brett, there are no school lunches here. Well, there's school lunches served here.
Yes. But you're making it all.
Been working through those products, but I was going through a system where I would buy them, move items forward, refill new products in the back, like even with things like applesauce. And so now over the past year, many of those things I have stopped buying because I'm working on, I'm doing a transition. This hasn't always been my goal. but my goal now is to go to the grocery store as little as possible.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I love that. And it's one transition at a time, one new thing at a time. I'm growing more tomatoes this year to do more of the canning.
Right.
So in your basement, then you're saying you've got these big shelves. So you basically just have like a couple grocery aisles then of stuff for your family.
I do.
Like your next few months.
My goal when I started in 2020, my goal was to have a year's supply of food storage for a large family.
Okay.
And so that is a huge amount of food.
Yes.
And so, and I did the math to a certain point. I did the math to where I got between 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And then I just couldn't do math anymore. And I pushed a little harder. And again, a lot of that stuff we've been using, but now I'm trying to use it more with the fact that I don't want to replace it from the grocery store.
Yeah.
Replacing it from the grocery store is a fine goal. And I did a recent video where I went to Costco and Aldi in building like a starter emergency pantry for someone who had no food storage.
Yeah.
And it came in under $600. And then since I, didn't quote need it here, we did give it to a local single mom with 4 or 5 kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
Helped hers get going. But that way I was able to shop and show my viewers, what to buy.
Yeah.
And I mean, Aldi still has cans under 50 cents.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but starting at the grocery store, again, $5, $10 a week. Or I know people who wait, in tax time, that is when they try to buy in bulk for as far in advance as possible. But even if it would be, just a couple $100 for families to get started.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people here at your event, are thinking more obviously homesteading thoughts and how to make that transition. But I do think it's perfectly fine to buy canned goods as you transition and learn the skills into other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that translates then to your freezers, because you're having more of your own meat that you're growing and stocking it with produce and things like that. What's kind of your freezer situation look like?
So there's a lot of them. But I am aware that having more meat canned on the shelves ready to go instead of having, 500 pounds of meat in the freezers, that's ideal.
Yeah.
So I do get stuck in a bit of a quandary because, I share what I'm cooking for my family, but I also do recipe development, but yet my family eats it, but yet I might need to make a meatball and I can't make that from, ground beef in the, in the jar there. So what we did in 2020 is I needed another like 20 cubic foot freezer. I don't remember then. I think I had 2 or 3 of the upright 20 cubic foot freezers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a collection of refrigerators I just keep until they die. Because I had my other ones full of produce and freezer meals and other meat that we had, that we purchased outside of what we had raised.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought 3, all I could find, because you could not buy a new freezer in 2020. I walked into Home Depot one day and they had the 7 cubic foot freezers. So I did get all 3 of them, and there were a few left. But we used those for extra meat storage the last couple of years. And then recently in doing some other things in our basement, I did find 3 other moms to give those freezers to, meat wise, to continue to work through meat to get it canned. So we've worked through a lot of the pork. We don't need beef right now because we buy at least 1 whole cow a year, sometimes 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still have a lot of roast and steak cuts. Yeah. But we did need more actual ground beef, like I said, for the meatballs or whatever. So I did recently just purchase grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. But we also have pigs that we're raising.
Oh.
And I have 2 that are ready to be butchered. And I really want to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
But that's not today. So what's coming up is end of July. I'm out of freezer meals right now. And honestly, I'm out of pretty much all the fruits and veggies. So I have about 2.5 empty freezers at this moment, with the goal, because I know we do have meat we're going to be processing.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm going to be at least harvesting vegetables or buying vegetables.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we've been working down these freezers over the last I know with the chickens, I'm thinking here, math. I think I've got about 300. It'll be 300 or so.
Wow.
I just like to think even if the chicken, is like 9 or 10 pounds, by the time I process it, 560. Yes, I can do math. So I probably got 3 to 350 pounds of chicken that will actually be going in the freezers end
That's
of
great.
July. And then I have another load. They're just like red broilers or Freedom Rangers. Another load of 60 to 75 that will be coming kind of mid-July, and then I'll raise those out until October. And so that's.
Oh, are you back?
Right back. Yeah, I was just
there we go.
I was going on and on about my turkeys.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it's really encouraging to me because we are at the beginning stages now of, we cook from scratch. We can, but we don't have a lot of room right now. We're waiting to move on to property. And so it's neat to see how you've done this very incrementally and taking one kind of new thing on at a time. So I think that's encouraging for me. And I know a lot of listeners are going to feel like that as well.
Yes. And we'll be learning how to butcher a pig at some point here. I've been watching videos on it.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I have a friend that does a big butchering and invites other families every January. So, anyway, that'll be the next upcoming skill. And I have a cow coming. So,
exciting.
I know, lots of things happening.
So many things. Well, as we are wrapping up,
Sure.
Why don't you share some encouragement for those who feel really overwhelmed, maybe when it comes to raising a family? You've got babies and toddlers and teenagers and homeschooling and finding the time to homestead. So if someone listening is kind of in a difficult season, kind of trying to figure out what's next, what encouragement would you give them in their journey?
I did miss the first part of it, Jamie, but I think I got most of it.
Just encouragement for all the things going on.
All the things going on. Well, again, I do have a lot of layers going on. We have a lot of things going in life, just like you and Jason do, but none of this has been, a 1 month journey.
Yeah.
Really, my homesteading hopes and dreams have been over the last 15 or so years. And it's been in the last 3.5, 4 years that I've been able to experience more of that. And even with, I just finished, I guess, we're rolling through summer. We're rolling into my 19th year of homeschooling.
Wow.
And, I've graduated 2. I'll graduate my next one in 2 years. So, I still, quote, only have 7 children ages 2 through 16. But again, so even that, I hope my years that I throw around, encourages moms. I've been homeschooling a long time. So when I started homeschooling, so homesteading, you can think of like your homeschool journey. A lot of us, when we started, we had one, maybe a kindergartner. I know and let's see, or no, I just had a kindergartner and a 3-year-old. And then a year later we added a newborn. So it really has been like incremental. We've added a baby every 2 to 3 years. We've continued to add other layers in the homestead over time. And we do, it's not everybody's favorite thing, but I do have like some kids that are so excited about different projects, and other kids aren't that excited, but they have been learning about our food system and things in our food. And there's a lot there. And so I feel like they appreciate and they understand why we're making the changes that are being made.
Yep.
And I have some family members that have had some health situations come up, and food really can, if not totally heal them, really help the situations. Even like, going to A2 raw milk is very beneficial. And so there's a reason for everything. And so little by little, bit by bit, if you can just do depending on where listeners live, if it's a small yard and you do like container gardening to start, or like Jamie, you do, a handful of raised beds and just every year expand on that.
Yeah.
Like I'm eyeing a whole other area that I would love to do the same size garden for next year. And I've watched the Back to Eden gardening documentary twice, so I'm pretty much an expert. But that's another free resource that people can do.
Yes.
And just about like, I want to cover this second area in wood chips this year and just let it rot down until next year. So I'm not doing this whole other second garden, but
all right. Well, I think we got the gist of that last part. But I mean, that's all. It's so encouraging. It's so encouraging just hearing your progress, and just that it takes years. It takes a long time. Right. And so often I get like, oh, we need to do everything right now, but it's little tiny baby steps. And I'm all about adding 1 or 2 new things a year, learn 1 or 2 new skills. So it's encouraging to see someone who's now really been 15 years down that journey and taking little baby steps when you can. So that's super encouraging.
Yes, just a little bit here and there.
Awesome. Well, Jamarel, thank you so much for just taking the time to chat with us today and share. I know you have a bajillion YouTube videos and resources out there, so we will definitely put in the session notes, we'll put all of that so they can come back and find you. And you have so many fun YouTube videos for people who are just wanting to learn and just step into your kitchen and your garden with you, which is awesome.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.
I feel like I need to say, and I'll see you real soon with another brand new video.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, ladies, I hope that you enjoyed that episode and interview with Jamarel. If you want to see all of the goings-ons of everything that she's doing over at her homestead, go check her out at Large Family Table. And this interview was the summer of 2022, so a year and a half ago. And she has made some amazing progress on the projects and the things that she's been doing in her home and her garden and all of that. So if you want to go check out and watch all of the incredible things that she has got going on, go check that out. And I just wanted to give a huge thank you and a shout out for joining us here today. And we'll see you guys back here next week for the next episode.